All right. So at this time, Moses is still going on his sermon. It's quite a lengthy sermon, but we'll find out why it's so long, because at the end, but yes, quite a lengthy sermon, but it's good quality information, basically just reviewing everything that they've talked about for the last 40 years, everything that the Lord has told them to abide by and to do. So let's start out with a quote, and we'll get right back into it. Says, "The world's a bubble, and the life of a man less than a span." This is from The World. Quote, author unknown. Let's read it one more time. "The world is a bubble, and the life of a man is less than a span." How true is that? So we may seem insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it is a very important role that we play here on earth. And it's mostly due to the fact that our lives are so short-lived in the grand scheme of things as well. Again, a matter of insignificance, like nothing really matters. But an optimist may see this as the opportunity to make the absolute most and to perform the absolute best that we can in the short time that we have to do so. So on that note, let's go ahead and get into just more things to perfect and protect us that Moses is teaching to the very, very early Israelites in the desert. This is even before they had crossed into the promised land. Let's go ahead and continue. And in review, "You must not eat in your towns the tithe of your grain and new wine and olive oil, or the firstborn of your herds and flocks, or whatever you have vowed to give, or your free will offerings, or special gifts. Present your burnt offerings on the altar of the Lord your God, both the meat and the blood. The blood of your sacrifices must be poured beside the altar of the Lord your God, that you may eat the meat. Gods of the peoples around you, whether near or far, from one end of the land to the other, and none of the condemned things are to be found in your hands. Then the Lord will turn from his fierce anger, and will show you mercy, and will have compassion on you. He will increase your numbers as he promised on oath to your ancestors." So we'll just pause right here real quick. Just things that we may not incorporate entirely anymore as literally as it is spoken here, but why not, right? Why not, if you are being called to donate something as simple as food to a shelter or to whomever? That's really a helpful thing, right? You're being called to just donate, even if it's an offering to the Lord. Maybe you have something set aside for special vow to the Lord, something that we can still incorporate in ways, right? We don't have. It doesn't have to be such an outward, presenting action. It can just be simple as donating food or something of that nature. Something that you do not consume yourself, right? But it says here you can eat your burnt offerings, right? So what is that akin to? It's akin to cooking, right? Maybe praying before your meal, something that you are consuming, but also doing something in reverence to the Lord. We can still incorporate this even if we're not butchers and we do not sprinkle the blood, right? What have you. But yes, that was the role of the priest back in the times of the Levites and the early Israelites. And it says here, of course, gods of the peoples around you, whether near or far. So, yes, there were other entities, like if you look from a broader view outside of the lens of Christianity or Catholicism or Islam even, it's very clear that there were other factors going on very early on, like there were entities or something that would visit the earth, that sort of thing. But it's a little bit harder of information to dig up. That's something that kind of has to be presented in front of you for you to really take heed of it or investigate that. But it was clear that yes, there were other entities, there were other beings that people would attribute certain things like fertility and stuff like that. It's kind of like one of the big ones. But it's acknowledged even in the text, so it's hard to deny. But that is not the end goal, right? These entities are not permanent gods of the earth. It's just not necessary to go ahead and attribute any of your success to them, because it's just not necessary. I don't know how else to say that. And of course, fear of the Lord, incorporating that fear of the Lord, of our Lord, right? And it says, we'll go ahead and continue here. However, of those that chew the cud or have a divided hoof, you may not eat the camel, the rabbit, or the hyrax. Although they chew the cud, they do not have a divided hoof. They are ceremonially unclean for you. The desert owl, the osprey, the cormorant. And do not neglect the little... Okay, we'll pause right here. This is just giving you just a reminder of things you should not be eating, right? And very clear in this section here, we do not eat like birds of prey or these strange animals, anything of that nature. But something is also mentioned at this time, which I took into consideration. You may or may not have to, you may or may not feel called to, but also mixing dairy and any kind of meat was also not permissible. Still not saying, think about sandwiches, think about like a lot of the Italian dishes, which I am part Italian, incorporate a lot of meat and dairy together. So to avoid it has been a bit of a challenge, but I'm trying to incorporate that more and more. Another thing, fish, right? Shellfish. So I've been trying to stay away from shellfish, only eating fish that would have scales, right? That is another thing in the kosher laws that I'm trying to incorporate just a little bit to see how the experience is. And so far it's been good. It has not been hard to do. Not really noticing any big significant devastations going on internally, so that's a good thing. Cancel. I almost ended the video because my Wi-Fi is struggling, but hopefully you can hear me. We're going to go on and continue. And do not neglect the Levites living in your towns, for they have no allotment or inheritance of their own. If anyone is poor among your fellow Israelites in any of the towns of the land the Lord your God is giving to you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward them. So, self-explanatory there. What if your servant says to you, I do not want to leave you, because he loves you and your family and is well off with you? Give me a second here. Then take an awl and push it through his earlobe into the door, and he will become your servant for life. Do the same for your female servant. So, I don't know why this was highlighted here, but an awl is like a leather tool that you use to poke holes in leather. So it's like a sharp, gauged device to pierce the ears. I don't know if they were talking about this in a metaphorical manner, or if this is something they actually did kind of ceremonially, if you will. Not quite sure about that, but it just reminded me, like, we have our ears pierced, so maybe it's not such a far off concept. Even the Israelites back in that time, I'm not sure if they pierced their ears. They had jewelry. I would assume yes, right? I think that's a pretty ancient fashion thing, but just something to think about. I'm not really sure. And then it says here, you must not sacrifice the Passover in any town the Lord your God gives you, except in the place he will choose as a dwelling for his name. There you must sacrifice the Passover in the evening when the sun goes down, on the anniversary of your departure from Egypt. Roast it and eat it at the place your Lord your God will choose. The Lord your God will choose. Then in the morning return to your anywhere else but your dwelling place, a place that the Lord will choose. Going a little bit further into holidays, and then we'll wrap this up. It says, 3 times a year all your men must appear before the Lord your God at the place he will choose, at the festival of unleavened bread, festival of weeks, and the festival of tabernacles. No one should appear before the Lord empty-handed. Each of you must bring a gift in proportion to the way the Lord your God has blessed you. If a man or woman living among you in one of the towns... Go ahead and continue. I didn't know if this is a different topic, but festivals, holidays, we should still, abide by, be thankful for, that sort of thing. If a man or woman living among you in one of the towns the Lord gives you is the Lord your God, in violation of his covenant, Got a little bit of typo here. This is what happens when I write it really fast. And contrary to my command, has worshipped other gods, bowing down to them, or to the sun, or to the moon, or to the stars in the sky, the hands of the witness must be first in putting that person to death, and then the hands of all the people. You must purge the evil from among you. So, again, worshipping other things besides the Lord who has been present and shown his glory and his power to the people is a big no-no, right? It's very much a slap in the face, like directly to God. If you're really not so aware of like what you're doing, say, I mean, I'm speaking from experience. Something that happened to me was I was completely out of the loop with the Lord, with worship, with talking to God, with prayer, all of that type of stuff. So this was like later in my college career, just, not that long ago, but still just out of the loop, just completely. I would talk to the moon just to gain I thought it was like a feminine energy. I thought it was going to help me actually with like fertility, not looking like I was trying to have a baby, but I was having some, cycle issues. So yeah, the moon was something that I confided in weirdly, right? Like why? Because I was reading some kind of book or something that influenced me. But that would have been like a death sentence, a big no-no. And it was actually right after that the Lord had intervened in my life in a very direct way. So can't say if that was a bad thing or a good thing, but it definitely put me, talking the moon, right? Probably a bad thing, but the actual moment of the Lord coming into my life was like a shift. It took time for me to like realize like that's what that was, and for me to transition fully into grace, but it was like an immediate thing. But at this time, if you were caught doing that, right, and knowing the Lord already and just purposely turning your back to him, it was a big, huge punishment, right? So just avoid it now in general. I don't think anybody's really practicing that kind of stuff, but still just good things to note. I've experienced it myself, so like it's a thing. And we can like admire, right? We can admire the sun and the moon. They're God's creations, but to actually, rely on those things while knowing God is actually in your life, it's just kind of like why even do that? But it's cool. If you're unaware, you're unaware. So that's why we talk about it. You guys, that's all I have. I gotta start my day, but I appreciate you listening, and I hope you have a great one. Bye-bye.